How could I have been together with a thin-haired woman like you for 35 years? All my retirement money is mine. You, with your thin hair, are neither a man nor a woman.
My husband, who's been with me for 35 years, scoffs at my thinning hair. Why did my husband suddenly start to my thinning hair when he reached re-age? I know all the reasons why.
Thank you. Here are your D papers.
I don't think my husband expected me the papers as he wished. He was wide-eyed, open-mouthed, and speechless. My name is Daisy, 67 years old. From the time I was in my 20s retired, I worked as a nurse at a G hospital. I retired at the age of 65, and it has been years since I retired. Now, I work as a part-time nurse at home. My husband Donald is 64 years old, years younger than me. He's on his way to work today, just his retirement. Donald and I got married 35 years ago. 32-year-old man. I was working in a hospital, mainly night shift. Then my father, who was a manager medical equipment manufacturer, came.
Daisy, why don't you think about getting married? You shouldn't only be passionate about your work, but you should also find a happy woman.
He arranged for me to meet Donald. My father's company dealt with medical devices such as thermometers, blood cuffs, and cardiac pacemakers. When my father became elderly, my brother took over his father's company, the company's management and sales going strong. When my father was in charge, Donald's son of the managing director, Donald was neither handsome nor talented. He had no outstanding skills. My first impression of him was that serious gentleman. At the time, I was on a blind date, thought this man is going to be my...
But I didn't really feel it.
Why did Donald seem so serious on the date? The reason is that it's not an exaggeration to say that an arranged marriage because of our circumstances. This is what I was told after the bee. But his father was like my father the whole time he was on the job.
Please let my son be a potential husband for your daughter, and please arrange a date. They're close in age. I think the two of them would get, together.
My father-in-law heard a rumor that I was looking for a future husband. I heard that he suggested to my father have a blind date with Donald. My father was not surprised, and he readily agreed. At the blind date, I just greeted one. To meet you, I'm Daisy. I only remember that I gave a minimal greeting. The fathers of both families proceed to talk to each other. And Donald asks about the end of the blind date.
I would very much like to see you again.
I vividly remember that, but now, 35 years after marrying, I've almost forgotten about the rest of our relationship. My father used to ask me, how are going with you and Donald these days? And my mother asked me,
why don't you wear that to your next party? It would be fashionable, wouldn't it?
She bought me a lot of new clothes. I can still vaguely remember that my parents arranged my relationship and marriage with Donald. But after the marriage, many hardships followed. As soon as they were married, Daisy's husband was in the best of spirits, saying he was grateful to Jasper and Eva for giving him the opportunity to meet her. And then, he continued,
As my father has said, I would like with you both after our marriage. I would like to thank both of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity, Daisy.
And then he simply decided to move in at my parents' house. Are you sure? I was surprised. Husband said, I'm indebted to both of them. He smiled brightly and said, it's natural.
I wonder if he feels that marriage is a tool for his connection.
I couldn't believe how easily he adapted to living with my parents. We started our honeymoon with a slip of bewilderment. My husband went to work as a regular employee of my father's company. After work, he comes home to my parents' house with my father, but that kind of life didn't last long.
Jasper complained that I don't do my well. I'm just doing business as usual.
Since Donald married Daisy, I've been extreme increase in customer I've heard wrong dates for business and miswritten documents. And then there was the one time he passed on a call from a non-client to an employee in charge. I can't help but think that you're married to Daisy.
At home, my husband and my father would complain about each other. Between us, my mother and I are just baffled. After a few months of this, my husband quarreled with my father and resigned from his company.
I'm sick and tired of seeing your face at home and work. From now on, I'm going to be a stay dad, not work. Just take care of the...
Sorry, but don't make such an import decision without consulting me. Besides, if you and your father don't get along, you don't have to live with him.
My husband's sudden resignation made me flinch. Then he continues.
I'm sure you'll be fine with me being a stay-at-home dad. I'm tired of working and being at home with your stubborn father. I'm really mentally tired now.
My husband found a cheap apartment right after that, and we moved in together.
If this was going to happen, I wish he never announced that. He was going to live with my parents in the first place.
I muttered my dissatisfaction to myself, but I never actually said anything to him. A few years later, our daughter he started looking for a job. But each time he found a new job, he quit. And then he found another one, and another one. Eventually, he started working part security guard and a janitor. I tried my best to balance the night at work and raising our child. Then when I was 40, my mother died of lung cancer, and when I was 55 years old, my father suffered a stroke and passed away. After raising my children and taking care of my parents, I wanted to devote myself to my work hobbies. That's what I thought. But life doesn't always work out the want it to. My husband, who had been working part jobs for the past few years, he was hired as a full-time employee by a security company, which was one of his part-time jobs. Of course, that fact itself is a hay occasion. But in reality, it was not a cause celebration. It was a sighing situation. As soon as my husband started working full-time, he started spending money. New cars, golf clubs, fishing equipment, and other expensive hobbies.
What is this new car? You have a license, but you don't drive, right?
I was astonished. My husband said to me, "You're not going to believe this.
I am the head of this house, and I work hard every day as a full employee. What I buy with my own money is my..."
With these words, I understood everything that was going on with him. My parents are dead. Our child is gifted. And my husband finally got a full-time job. He believes that he can now indulge in his expensive hobbies. Maybe I put him up with a lot of bull without realizing it. When we got married, he asked my parents because he wanted to be a husband. During work and during his free time, he was being forced to be with people he didn't get along with. He was mentally exhausted and couldn't work a regular job for many years. When I think about it, I can't say back to my husband. But he took advantage of the fact that he didn't say anything back to him. My husband took it even further.
Your hair is getting even thinner, isn't it? Why not try some natural remedies instead of buying expensive hair growth pills? If you don't, you'll even be mistaken for a man on the street or at the work.
My husband suddenly started making thinning hair.
I'm concerned about it myself. Leave alone.
When I said that back to him, he'd say, "I don't know what you mean."
You just leave it like that. That's getting worse. You're a woman. You should take better care of yourself. Buy some hair growth products or G-Doctor. I don't like it when you're lax about one of your flaws like that.
That's when my husband's long talk, I started noticing thinning hair in my mid-30s. And by the time I was in my 50s, become quite noticeable. But my husband has never complained thinning hair. Rather, it's more like my husband comes home much later than I do. We moved out of my parents' house and started living in a rented apartment. Sometimes my parents would come to because they were worried about me. My husband felt awkward, so he took job as a security guard, and he would take naps at an internet, can never come home. After my parents passed away, He got a full-time job at a security company and started coming home early. And every time he saw me, he started complaining about my thinning hair. This situation continues to this day. He married me through an arranged marriage, and my father had to give him a lot of money. And because of that, he had to resign his job. After that, he couldn't find a job and had to work part-time constantly. When he sees my face, I think he gets irritated because he remembers his. Just as I was thinking that, my husband started making fun of my thinning hair. He suggested we try a new product. I found out the real reason through daughter.
Mom, I saw Dad walking with a woman on the streets.
My husband was having an affair with. I asked a credit agency to investigate my credit report. The result was as I expected. I had all the evidence I needed to my husband was cheating on me. But the most unforgivable thing was that my daughter witnessed her husband's affair. No matter how bad our marriage life, it should not allow his child to see him suffer. My mind was made up. Divorce was the only option. Then the question was, when would I husband for a divorce? When it comes down to it, I didn't know when to tell him or how to start the conversation. But then I thought to myself, today, I'm going to ask my husband for divorce. On the day I decided to do a surprise, my husband divorced me for.
How could I have been 35 years old and not known about a woman like you? You, with your thinning hair, are not my wife nor a woman. Now that I'm retired, I hope to spend the rest of my life without seeing your disgusting head.
As usual, my husband scoffed at my hair. He put the divorce papers on the tape. But I didn't count on his retirement. He worked for the security company 10 years from his 50s until now. He will likely receive around $1 million or less in retirement benefits.
I don't need this.
I shove back the divorce papers that husband has presented to me.
What? It's pointless to come back to, okay?
Yes, I've made up my mind too. Here, divorce papers.
In exchange for the blank divorce husband had given me. I handed him completed divorce papers I had already prepared. His eyes widened. His mouth dropped. He was speechless.
Hey, are you trying to say that your husband has no use for you now that he's retired? You've come up big when I'm getting retirement payout.
My husband complained in a voice that seemed as though he hardly tried to speak. I can't help but let out a sigh.
How much do you think you'll get in pay? You've been a full-time employee of a security company for about 10 years. It's about $1 million anyway.
You're just trying to get me to leave because my severance pay is so low. You only saw me as a man who brings, didn't you?
In front of the red-faced, angry husband held out a single brown envelope.
I decided to divorce you because I saw you at home making funny faces, and because of what's in this envelope.
What?
He froze for a moment. The next moment, he snatched the envelope from my hand. He looked at the photos in the envelope. Hastily, he hid them behind his back.
This is, just for fun.
My husband shouted out loudly. Then Sally said, "What's wrong?"
You could be mistaken for an old Marthinning hair. I get depressed when I'm with you. Don't try to take care of yourself. My life is so boring. I like to have the surreal once in a while.
My husband wants to blame me for cheating on him, but I can't admit that.
If you don't like me, you can leave me. I can't forgive that our daughter W, your cheating scene. How can you flirt with a woman in broad daylight in front of your wife?
Our daughter would have a boyfriend. Sure, she doesn't care about such a thing like this.
My husband showed no signs of remorse.
Well, let's talk about it through Ola.
Then I left the house. Later, I received a phone call from my exhusband, who must have seen the alimony notice he received from my lawyer.
I miss you when I'm home alone. Let's remarry.
I'm speechless with dismay at my ex asking me to remarry as soon as he.
Oh, why don't you remarry her?
No, she said she was just pee with me. She told me not to pester her, only broke up with you. She even called me a stalker. You're all I've got.
No, if you don't have anything to say, I'm going to hang up on you.
I told him that, and he got all flustered.
Wait a minute. Listen, why don't we go shopping we can go to a cafe or a restaurant, something.
Oh, you're buying me a drink? I asked. That is.
You are probably full of money from hefty alimony payment to me. You don't have any money, do you?
My ex-husband suddenly became very angry and raised his voice.
That's right, I had to borrow money, you demand alimony. Just because I cheated on you for a while doesn't mean that I don't love you anymore. I don't think it's right that the $3,200,000.
Don't you know? The marriage is long and the relationship bad. And if the mental damage is too great from infidelity, alimony can be that much.
My ex-husband was shocked to hear that I had heard someone's voice behind him.
It's a loan shark. I'll hang up now.
He quickly hung up on me. So I just blocked his number. Later, my ex-husband called my daughter a bitch in front of her.
He said he was lonely and wanted me care of him. He was so persistent that I blocked calls.
That's what my daughter told me.
I'm sorry for bothering you.
I apologized to her, and she said,
It's not your fault. It's all his fate.
she smiles at me.
He didn't get along with his mother and grandfather. He didn't come home as often as he used to. I don't even consider him my father. Worry about it.
My daughter encouraged me by saying so. My ex-husband got blocked by me and my daughter. He blurted out to everyone he met that he was lonely. One day, I went to inspect the car. The dealer who sold Pure's ex-husband's new car said that I could get a smaller apartment for rent without my family. My ex-husband, now retired, is trying to find a new job, and his debts seem to be increasing. He had moved out of the apartment he was renting. He can't pay his cell phone bill, and phone is out of service. He has been living in his car with money he has left and is in huge debt. He is also on the run from loan sharks. We have no way of knowing where he. Then we got some good news. My daughter is getting married to a man she met while doing an internship at a nursing school. Of course, we didn't send an invitation to our ex-husband. He's missing, and I want him to attend. The day before the wedding, my ex-husband called her from a payphone. Before she could say no, he was forced to hang up due to lack of money. As for me, I am living with my daughter and her while continuing to work as a nursing home. The family home that my late parent and me had been vacant for a long time. They renovated it and turned it into a beautiful 2-family house. My son-in-law is a really nice person. He takes good care of me as well as my daughter. He suggested that we live in a 2-house because he thought my daughter worried if I lived alone. When I went shopping with my daughter-in-law, she casually asked me to buy her some things, but it just could be because my son-in-law is in high spirits. After all, he's a newlywed. I made the mistake of believing in husband's kindness when he was just to me. That's why, in order to prevent my dad and son-in-law from repeating the same mistake I made, I want to have a relationship where we can both live freely and comfortably.
Mom, this is the one I chose with him. Thank you for everything you've done. I hope you can enjoy your own life on.
With that said, the gift I gave my daughter on. The day before her wedding was a beautiful orange hat